For the group observation, I chose to observe a men's softball team. It is actually my roommate Tyler's team that he plays on. It is a team composed of men anywhere from the age of 20 and well into their 40s. The team is called Dark Nine Softball and have become somewhat of a known team over the time that I have observed them. The team doesn't have a centralized location where they meet up for practices and meetings and things such as that. The team has members from all over the state, and this is why they can't have a place where they actually meet up because, they have members from, Augusta, Macon, even all the way up here to Kennesaw, Griffin, and stuff like that. But if they do hold a practice, they would meet in the Peachtree City area. The team also doesn't have a home location where they play games either, because most of the time they're playing in tournaments, and most of the tournaments can go from, Georgia all the way up to Tennessee or Florida. The time during which I observed them, they actually went on a trip down to Panama City and had a tournament down there, and did very well down there. I chose to observe this group because I've been around sports all my life and never actually took the time to actually, think of how teams worked as a group and how group dynamics actually affected them. I played on many teams and never knew that there were so many terms or examples for what was going on with my team. Now after this class is, coming to an end, I now have made these connections and completely understand why certain things happened with my team and why others didn't. I also selected this team because I love the concept of a team, and ever since my injury to my shoulder, I can't really be a part of one anymore. There's nothing better than the camaraderie of a team and being with your teammates, and with this team, I kind of got that feeling again. I want to now just go ahead and give a brief overview of each of the stages of the group development and how the softball team was able to use each one. Forming is the stage where the group comes together and gets to know each other. The men's softball team that I was observing had already been put together for a couple years before I'd even gotten there. So in this case, they really didn't have, your typical forming where you get together and know each other. But while I was there were instances where they brought in a new teammate and they, as an individual, would have to form in with the other group and get to know them rather than the group getting to know each other at once. The next stage would be storming. Storming is where, the members of the group vie for power. I would say this happened, kind of at the practices when I first got there. The members would, come in and they would all have different ideas of what they wanted to do that practice. They would all put their ideas on their table. There would be some arguments, some wanted to hit, some thought they needed more fielding practice. But towards the end, they all knew they had a job to be done, and they had the coach who was going to pick the ideas on what they were going to do anyways. The third stage would be the norming stage, and this is where an agreement is finally reached on how the group operates. This would happen, when the team finally decided that they would listen to the coach. The group would usually do as he says during the practices and the games. The coach always had the final say in what was going to happen with practices, if they were going to hit, field, do whatever that night. The coach also had the power, to set the lineup, stuff like that during game day. And the team knew, no matter who, all the bickering and stuff back and forth, that the coach would have the final say. And this is how they normed. And they looked for the coach for leadership and setting how the group would operate. The next stage would actually be the performing stage. This is where groups come together, practice what they do, and helps them become more effective in the things that they do. This is basically where the softball team would come together once a week and have practices. The practices could range, from an hour, hour and a half to 2 hours. It's kind of hard to get these players to come together and practice just because, they live all over the state. Um, they have other jobs. They're grown men. This isn't the only thing they do. This is more kind of a hobby. But they usually got together once a week. Um, before I got there, they didn't really come together and practice. And actually, when I got there, they had actually started practicing more. This helped them actually get a little bit better and help them do better in tournaments and become a little bit more well known around the state. The last and final stage would be the adjourning stage. This is the process, where the group gets some closure, stops what they're doing, and moves on to different things. It's kind of hard to say. The softball team doesn't really actually go through this stage. Um, they kind of do it each year around December, because it gets way too cold to be swinging a bat. This will be the end of the season, but the group will actually still keep in contact all throughout the winter. They're actually they're actually friends outside of just the softball, and they usually get back together around the spring. So I guess you could say the group do adjourn for a little bit, but they usually come back together the next year around March and start. I guess you could say the group stage is over again. The stage which I saw the most improvement in would have to be the performing stage. Um, when I first got there, this team, I guess you could say they were average at best. Because most of them, this was just a hobby for them, and they were doing it on the side because their best days, baseball were behind them. They couldn't do that. They were just, still looking to be a part of a team and have fun. So they weren't really, practicing, they were just going to the tournaments, going to games, and playing there with whatever they had. But actually, when I first got there, they actually did start to practice, once a week, maybe even once every 2 weeks, whenever they could get together. This actually really helped them because they came more together as a team. They gelled. This turned out to be good for them because they started winning more games. They didn't ever actually win a tournament while I was with them, but they did become. They finished higher. They were getting second, third. I've actually learned a lot from the softball team with group dynamics. Um, I've learned that being a leader isn't as easy as it looks on the surface. There are many different things that you must do to be a good leader and keep everyone that you are leading happy. Um, the softball team, the coach, he's dealing with 15 grown men egos, which is very hard to do. They feel like they all know what's right. They feel like they're all the best. So it's a little harder for him, to keep the group going in the right direction. It's also harder for him to establish himself as a leader because he plays as well too. Um, but he only plays, when they don't have enough players or stuff like that. Um, this creates, a feeling that he's not, the leader or the coach all the time, but he is. And I actually gained a lot of respect for him because he was able to balance, being a player and a coach. I actually learned a lot from, observing this team. I was able to, connect what I learned in class with how it actually works in real life situations. Even with the softball team, might have been a little different. Um, they might not have went through all the stages of group development, but group dynamics were huge with this team. They went through, some rough patches. A player or two had to be let go. Um, but that didn't stop them. They kept actually getting better and ended up finishing better than what they had started.